If you're looking for a new laptop to handle your GIS work, which one should you buy? And that's exactly the question I asked myself recently. My trusty, if aging VivoBook has started to struggle with the increasing demands of GIS, so it was time for an upgrade. And in this video, we'll look at the key things to consider when choosing a laptop for GIS. That includes the most important spec, some options on the market, and at the end, I'll show the laptop I actually ended up buying, plus a few interesting steps I had to take to get GIS software running smoothly on it. First, let's talk about performance. GIS is a blend of data processing and heavy graphics, so it needs a powerful machine. Take ArcGIS Pro, for example. It's very resource intensive, much more so than QGIS, so we can use ArcGIS Pro as a benchmark. If your laptop can run Pro well, it'll handle anything else out there in the GIS world. So here we have the system requirements as published by Esri for Pro 3.4. I've got the spec for my current laptop on the right, just for comparison, because I know that machine struggles. If we look first at the CPU, the computer's brain, the minimum is 2 cores. Cores are independent processing units inside the CPU. Recommended is 4 and 10 is optimal. So we want at least 10. Luckily for modern laptops, they already offer this or more. And going beyond 10 cores won't bring massive benefits for most GIS tasks, so 10 plus is a safe benchmark. Next is RAM, the active memory. This is going to be important for GIS. Minimum is 8 GB and recommended is 32 GB. My current laptop falls somewhere between those. Optimal is 64 GB. That's a lot of RAM. We may struggle to get that on smaller laptops. But I do have a workstation in addition to my laptop, and that has 32 GB of RAM, and that runs perfectly fine with GIS. So I think 32 GB of RAM will give us the performance we need. Of course, you always want more if you can get it, but unless you're doing something incredibly heavy, 32 GB should be more than enough. Onto the GPU. This is the graphics card. Many thin or cheaper laptops have integrated graphics, which share resources with the CPU. That's not ideal for GIS. We want a dedicated graphics card to handle all the rendering, and that's what Esri recommends. My old VivoBook had a NVIDIA MX350, decent for its time, but now mid-range. So need an upgrade on that, something like the NVIDIA RTX series or similar. So we have our minimum specifications we are looking for. Other considerations would be things like screen, storage, and ports. These come down to personal preferences, but one of the most important decisions is screen size, as that affects portability. Screens are measured diagonally in inches. For GIS, screen sizes from 13-inch to 18-inch plus are all viable, depending on how mobile you need to be. Personally, I was looking for something compact but functional, so I was looking around the 14-inch range. But we'll look at all options. So let's take a look at some machines. So let's consider Dell, who are a US-based company with a good reputation for solidly built, reliable machines. Their XPS range, they say, is for creative professionals, which I think is GIS people. And for that range, we've got screen sizes from 13-inch up to 17-inch. So let's have a look at the 16-inch version of the machine they've got. Now, I really like the Dell website. It allows you to pick the specification you want and see the price change. Now, at the moment, it's configured for the basic specification for this model, which puts it at 2,900 Singapore dollars. I'll put the conversion in USD, but I'm going to be looking at SGD because that's the region I'm in. So the basic config, the processor, we've got an Intel Ultra 7, 155H, that's the model number, 16 cores, so we've hit our minimum 10 cores, and that's a really beefy processor, so no problem at all there. Let's have a look at the graphics card, and these are listed in increasing levels of performance. I think the Intel Arc graphics is a little bit basic. I think we'd want at least the NVIDIA 4050 graphics card if we were setting up for GIS. Then looking at the memory, we'd want at least 32 gigabytes of RAM. We said that before. Now the storage, I think 512 gigabytes is a little bit on the low side. That's what my existing VivoBook has got. It is pretty full. I think for convenience, we'd want at least 1 terabyte of storage. It's not going to affect the performance of GIS, but I think just for convenience sake. Now looking at the display, it's 16.3 inch, so it's a good size screen. This is a fairly large machine, but that 1920-1200, that is quite a low resolution for a laptop of this size. And I think we'd want to go for the higher spec resolution that's available here. And that's actually a very, very good screen. It's also a touch screen. Now that puts the price at around about 3,900 Singapore dollars for the kind of minimum spec we'd want for GIS. And in this specification, although it is out of stock, it might not be in your region, of course, but it is here. That would be a very good machine for GIS. So just out of interest, if we went to really a much higher spec, what sort of price would we be looking at? Well, we could choose the Ultra 9, so this is an even more powerful processor. It's actually asking us to upgrade the graphics card as well if we choose that option. And that give us pretty high spec. A higher graphics card, we could go to the 4070. That's really one of the best. 64 gigabyte. Interestingly, it's not available with that graphics card. It's just what they've got, I guess. But 64 gig of RAM, and that's going to put us nearly at 5,000 Singapore dollars for a very, very high spec machine. And if we went for the full 4 terabytes, you know, that's going to put it up to over 6,000 Singapore dollars. So if you've got money to burn, you know, you can certainly upend these. So let's have a look at another model, one of the smaller models. So let's have a look at the 13 inch. So this is going to be a small portable machine. And we've got two options here. One is the older configuration, so older chips, things like that. So let's have a look at the newer 13-inch laptop. So it's got a Snapdragon processor, 12 cores, but not quite as powerful as the Intel chips we were looking at on the 16-inch version. But I think the thing that would put me off is the graphics card, because this is not a graphics card. And indeed, if we look at the details on the website here, we can see it here. This is a shared graphics card, or shared graphics, so it's not a dedicated graphics card. And we did say for GIS, we would want at least a dedicated graphics card. So in this configuration, I would not purchase this machine 13-inch. So let's have a look at HP. Now HP have got the ZBook range, and these are powerful machines. I think they're the top of the HP range. And they've got various models: Firefly, Power, Ultra, Studio, Fury. And these are all going to be powerful machines, perfectly good for what we need. Now, just looking at the HP site in my particular region, there only seems to be 14 and 16-inch models of these available. But that may differ where you are. There's a lot of options here. They come in various configurations. Again, the same chips as we were looking at, the 7 and the 9, Ultra 7s and 9s that we saw with Dell. And, you know, 32 gig of RAM, 64 gig of RAM. There are 1 terabyte of storage, various configurations. So this range would really be, any of these would be very good if you can just get the configuration you want. Some of these are, again, a little bit small on the small side, 500 GB of storage. Again, I would prefer more than that. But actually, there's not much in stock, at least from the HP official website in the region that I'm in. And the ones they do have in stock have quite low storage. So let's have a look at the spec of this. And the 16-inch is 3,480 Singapore dollars. And the 14-inch is just over $3,000. And we'll look at the 14-inch a little bit later. So let's consider ASUS, Taiwanese brand and makers of my current laptop, and consider whether we could have a gamer's laptop for GIS. And absolutely, gamers' machines are powerful, they're built to do complex graphics, so we could absolutely go for that, if you're prepared to put up with some funky lighting. So ASUS have this ROG range, which I believe stands for Republic of Gamers, and they've got their Zephyrus and Strix machines, which are very powerful, come in various configurations and prices. And look at this Strix Scar 18-inch, very powerful Ultra 9 processor, 5090 graphics card. I think that's top of the range NVIDIA graphics card, 64 gig of RAM, 4 terabytes storage. Incredibly powerful machine, but 9,000 Singapore dollars, way more powerful than you really need, but it is very future proof. So you can spend anything you want, but these are often quoted as being good machines to have if you're doing any kind of graphics, including GIS. Of other interest is this ProArt range, and this is for creative professionals. So I think this is of very interest, a lot of interest to GIS. And they come in 13 or 16 inch. And looking at the 16-inch machine, again, the AMD Ryzen chip, that's roughly equivalent to the Intel Ultra 9, so very powerful. Good graphics card, 64 gig of RAM, 2 terabytes of storage. You know, very, very powerful machine. That would be great for GIS. The 13 inches as well. There's a few different configurations depending on how powerful you want to be. The lower end, probably not quite what we want. But these other two configurations look pretty good. Moving on to another Taiwanese brand is MSI. And they seem to have a lot of very competitively priced laptops available here. So let's just pick out 32 gig of RAM from the options on the left. But some really competitively priced machines here. Look at this Sword machine here. You know, Intel Core i7. This actually looks like it's an older, because of the naming convention, an older processor. But it's actually a very powerful processor. That would be absolutely fine. We've got a decent graphics card, 32 gig of RAM, 2,300 Singapore dollars. Really very, very good value. Lots of sizes to choose from. Some really well-priced machines here. So definitely worth taking a look at MSI. Got a good reputation, produce good machines. Definitely worth a look. Talking of well-priced machines, ASUS have a reputation for producing decent budget machines, so worth a look. Let's filter these by memory. Just 3 machines with 32 gig of RAM, so again, they're not going to be very high-end machines. But here we've got 14 and a 16-inch machine, pretty reasonably priced, around about $2,000. Pretty good spec on the 16-inch. Ultra 7 processor, decent graphics card, 32 gig of RAM. That looks a very good value machine for $2,000 or $2,100. A couple of configurations on the 14-inch. One has a lower end graphics card, but this one has the 4070 graphics card, so that's pretty high end. So if you're looking at the budget end, ASUS will always be worth a look. For a machine that I wanted to buy, I shortlisted a number of options all around the 14-inch range. So first, the Dell HPS. This range is very highly regarded, and of course you can look at individual reviews once you've shortlisted them. And this one I was very interested in. Had the best screen of any of the options here. Interestingly, the ports are quite limited, only Type-C USB, no HDMI, no Type-A USB. Does come with adapters, but could be a bit less convenient. Dell are a premium manufacturer. You're always going to pay a little bit more for a Dell, but they are very good machines, so I was very interested in that one. Likewise with HP, again another premium manufacturer. I was very interested in their Firefly range. Unfortunately, on the HP site, I only looked at the manufacturer's sites for this particular exercise, but on their site there wasn't a particularly high-end version of the Firefly available. I think I would have liked a Firefly, but again, the higher end one just wasn't in stock. More on the budget end, ASUS, of course, look, very good package. They had the best graphics card of any of the shortlisted machines here. Good package. Likewise with the ASUS Pro Art. Again, for a small machine, this was only 13.3 inches. It really is a very high spec machine. And if I was looking for a small machine, I'd be really interested in this one. But in the end, I thought 13.3 was a bit small. I'd prefer something a bit bigger. MSI, again, likewise, good all-round option, and actually ended up being the cheapest of any of the shortlisted machines that I looked at. So which one did I go for? Well, the MSI Prestige. It seemed the best value for the machines I looked at and were available in the region I'm in. Of course, there are many more machines out there which will do a great job with GIS. Just make sure you get the specifications you need. Looking at the MSI Prestige, it's very compact, it's narrow, but has more depth than my old VivoBook. It does have face recognition, which is really convenient. The keys are very small when typing, but otherwise it's a very good, well-lit keyboard. Some reports that it does get very hot with heavy work, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. When it comes to installing GIS software, installing QGIS was no problem. But I did encounter problems when trying to install ArcGIS Pro. I got this error message saying .8, .NET 8 was required, despite this being Windows 11 machine. So it was necessary to go and download .NET 8. Note, .NET 9 does not work with ArcGIS Pro 3.4, so it does need to be .NET 8. Now, once that was installed, ArcGIS Pro did install and works pretty well. And so far, I'm pretty happy with the MSI machine, but we'll see how it goes.